It's makes me happy to have you here, and we'd like to have you tell us a few of your experiences in your life and your father's life maybe, and we'd like to record this for Historic Monroe. And I understand your wife is here, and her name is Elizabeth. And I understand too, she was born on a cheese factory?
Stockton, Illinois.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'll have to find out and talk to her later. What factory that was. And I understand that they made Limburger there, huh?
I don't know whether they made Limburger there, but her father did make cheese up around New Glarus where he made Limburger.
I see. All right, your father came over from Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Bern. And they say that they're not really slow. One some others Stettler, huh? Ernie Allman says that it's kind of a joke over there with the bears that they're slow moving. And Ernie says, no, we're just waiting for the rest of the fellows to catch up.
Well, I can tell you a little story that Mrs. Clara Roof told about the Berners being slow. But this fellow was in an airplane ride and they had some problem and they passed out parachutes, but this one fellow didn't get any. He's a Berner, he'll go down slow anyway.
Well, that's every canton over there in Switzerland has a little joke, you know.
Yes, they do.
Like everything is big in Texas and cheddar heads in Wisconsin, and of course my grandfather came from Bern on my mother's side. Yes, and when you grew up, Walt, and this was at what factory, or were you born at a cheese factory, or?
Well, shall I start out with Dad coming over here in
Yes,
1906?
Okay, I'd really appreciate that, to record this history for our cheesemaking set here at Monroe.
And his first job was out at the Spike Cheese Factory. There's a farm, the Spike Farm was right across the road. They had no power. They skimmed the cream off the whey and they had to churn butter all by hand, pump water by hand. And after Dad was in this country for 3 years, he went back to Switzerland and married my mother in 1909. And Dad's first cheese factory was the Flanagan. That was between Argyle and Monticello. That's where I was born. And
Right at the factory or in town?
at the factory.
Right at the factory. Born,
Yeah.
There's the original cheesemaker born right at the cheese factory.
Yeah.
And then what kind of farmers did they have? How did they bring their milk at that time?
Oh, horse wagon for many years after that. And the next cheese factory, I think, was the Balls Mill,
And where's that located at?
northeast of Monroe,
I see.
or northwest of Judah.
And they made Swiss cheese?
Sure, during the summer, no milk in the winter. Hardly any cheese factory made cheese during the winter, back in those days.
Yeah. And what was the reason?
Well, farmers had their cows freshen in the spring, and in the fall, they'd dry them all up, so there was no milk. In the spring, they'd have their calves, and
They didn't milk much in the wintertime in those days. Well, most of the roads were impassable, and
Right.
you couldn't get through. I suppose you can remember a few snowstorms, huh?
I'll tell you another story. Before I was born, Mother was in the family way with me, and I think that was when Dad was at the Flanagan, and they were going home with horse and buggy, and my mother and my oldest sister, Elsie, and Dad. And out toward the county farm, which is Pleasant View home now,
Yeah.
this horse dropped dead, going at full speed, and the family were all thrown out. I was born in January, and this was in the winter sometime, and it's a wonder Mother didn't have a miscarriage. I wouldn't be here.
Is that right? My God. Well, I guess God wanted you here too for a purpose.
And somehow they got back to town and took a livery home.
That's where you could rent a livery at the livery station.
Yeah. And
So then, when you grew up, then what is your first recollection down at the cheese factory? I mean, the farmers coming in, or you remember downstairs? You lived upstairs, I understand.
Yes,
probably, huh?
yes. I know the fellow that lives in that Bobbinsville cheese factory today.
And it's still in existence, but it's not running anymore, right?
No, there was an artesian well, water running in the cheese factory, and there was a tank outside, water running continuously.
Well, that was a pretty good deal, you know, I mean, when you had water, because that's a big thing, you know,
Yes.
the cheese factory, especially without electricity. Well, what kind of power did you have then? Did you have mostly all by hand when you was first
I don't
young,
know.
or did you have gas or steam, or?
No steam, no. Dad didn't have steam until he moved down to the Whitehead factory down in Cadiz Township. But from the Bowles Mill, he went to the College Hill, west of Judah, a brand new cheese factory. Dad was the first cheesemaker to make cheese there. And the farmers had to bring wood to fire under the kettles according to how many cows they had, cordwood.
Yeah.
And there was a line shaft went out through the wall to pump water, and Dad put a pulley on that shaft and sawed all the cordwood by hand. Now the farmers had to bring wood according to the amount of cows they had. If you had twice as many cows as I, you'd have to bring twice
Just as much wood.
the amount of wood.
And I imagine the farmer cut his own wood, or they?
Sure. And I remember when Dad traded off his first horse, not his first horse, on the first car, which was a Saxon Touring. And I think he had a better rig with the horse and buggy than he had with that Saxon.
Is that right?
Dad sawed all the wood himself, cordwood, with a stationary buzz saw, and he split the wood into like firewood, and he heated the kettles with wood. There was a cart, a steel cart, that you fired in, and when the milk or whey got warm enough, you had to turn the crank, and the carriage that you fired in would go under the hot water kettle, which was a steel kettle like farmers used for heating water to butcher. And this kettle was close to the separator, which was a sharpless separator run off the shaft. And Dad didn't have a lid on this water kettle, and he'd always start the separator by pulling on the belt to get it started. And he, for some reason or other, he stumbled and fell backwards into this hot boiling water. And the only thing I can remember, that when Mother took off Dad's shirt, the skin come right off with the shirt. And I don't know how or who might have finished making cheese that day. Surely couldn't have been Father. And
That was one of the hazards of cheese making, the steam pipes, the hot water, and even the hot whey. I think I understand a few cheesemakers ended up in the kettle.
yeah, yeah, that happened.
Some maybe accidentally and some maybe on purpose, which was like 122 degrees.
When we moved in 1920 down to the Whitehead factory with team and bobsled, the farmers from down there came over and picked up the furniture. Now, Dad didn't own the equipment in this cheese factory. At that time, the farmers owned it.
So you worked just for a percent.
Yeah.
Just worked for a percent.
Yes. Anyway, we came as far as Monroe with the team and bobsleds, and we had dinner down at the City Hotel. The farmers put their horses in the livery stable and fed them, and we continued on down to the Whitehead factory. A lot of times through fields, the roads were closed up, snowed in. And at the Whitehead factory, we had more milk. Dad could make cheese in the wintertime every other day. There, he owned the equipment and had steam.
And you had steam there.
Yeah. And while we were there, we got electricity.
What year was that about?
1920.
Electricity in 1920 already.
No, we didn't have it then, but it came while Dad was there. And Dad made there for 9 years, and the farmers voted him out. And I think I can say safely that my father was one of the better Swiss cheesemakers in Greene County in his day.
Yeah, I understand that scenario real well. I had a cheesemaker tell me, most cheesemakers only made cheese so long at one factory. The farmer was never really satisfied, and he always thought they're going to get maybe somebody who worked cheaper. Or...
Well, the reason Dad had to move, Chris Strauss's son was one of the farmers there, and Vince Link was his brother-in-law, and this Strauss wanted Link to have the cheese factory, and he got it. Dad was voted out. So Dad was still making Swiss cheese twice a day, and he had a chance to get an American cheese factory down by Stockton, Illinois, which he took.
You don't remember the name of that factory, do you?
Lehner.
Lehner factory.
Yeah, Negroes named. The factory was on Lehner's land, and they farmed the big farm right close by the cheese factory. He was Negro and she was German, white. And their children, some of them were quite dark and some you couldn't tell that they were Negro. Anyway.
So then from Stockton, then...
I taught Dad how to make American cheese. I had just come home from taking the very short course in Madison when I stopped at my uncle here in Monroe. He says, you have to go down to the Lehner factory to make cheese. And did I hate that. Young boy, 19 years old. And I asked a friend of mine here in Monroe, Franz, what was his name, Mother? Franz Miller. He came along with me, and I was glad for that. We got down here to the Lehner factory. There was milk in the back. No cheesemaker. So I started right in making cheese. And then I taught Dad how to make American cheese.
Well, isn't that something? A 19-year-old boy. And that was with raw milk, too.
Yes.
That's when you had a little gas, you had to... You keep flopping them and cheddaring them and cheddaring them and cheddaring them and
Nat
them and yeah, and then from Stockton, well, that was quite a thing. You make the regular 70-pound cheddars, then,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah, no. They were either twins or daisies.
Oh, you made twins or daisies down
Yeah.
there. You didn't make the cheddar, the
No,
regular cheddar.
no.
You made 40-pounders and 20.
And from there, Dad moved up to Rock Grove to a brick cheese factory. Pleasant Hill. And it so happened that Grinder Swiss was a better price than American, and what did my father do? He put in kettles and started making Grinder Swiss.
Is that right? But the other day, Walt, Dorn Swagger, you know Dorn.
I know him very well.
Dorn had some, Dorn says to me, look, John, here, you want a taste of this cheese here? It's a grinder. Now, have you ever tasted better cheese than that? Some of them said just because it didn't have any eye formation, they called it a grinder.
Sure.
Kind of the grade, but it was maybe better eating than an A.
Right.
It was a little, yeah, well, yes, that was, and on the grades now, there was the A, right?
Yeah.
And then the other grade, next grade was
B,
B, and then
C,
and then
Grinder.
the grinder. And that was when everybody said, well, how many grinders did you make?
Yeah.
I make cheese up here on cheese days, and they say, well, what is it, John, today? A grinder? And I'll say, well, they don't know yet. We're still stirring. I got all these cheesemakers here from Greene County helping me stir. They ought to be able to stir up a good one. All right. So then you from out there in Illinois, you made cheddar, or your dad made grinder Swiss, and then did you stay with your father then and continue with the cheese making?
No, I never did stay with Dad. One reason, I wasn't about to make cheese twice a day, and Dad always did, but he was here in Greene County. But when he got down to Stockton, it was once a day. That's what he liked.
And then when did you separate from him then? Or you stayed with him? What I'm saying is, did you go out on your own in another cheese factory, or?
I started working for Hank Bulliger down at the Folky. My dad talked to him uptown here one day, and he says to Hank, I'll send the boy down, you hire him. And I was brought up to do as Dad says. So I went down and hired out. And I didn't want to make cheese. I was interested in farming. I had worked on farms during school vacations since I was 12 years old. And the first job I had was cultivate corn he tacked a board on the back of the tongue, and I drove the horses, and this was a walking cultivator. He done the cultivating, and before the summer was over, he bought a new cultivator, a foot steer, and he put little Walter, 12 years old, on that cultivator, and was I proud I could cultivate corn all by myself. That was Ben Abraham that I worked for. He hauled milk to Dad.
For some of you people that don't understand, you know, if you don't get that cultivated in the right place, you plow out a lot of corn.
Yeah, he wants to do that.
And you get a lot of wrath from the farmer, right?
And if you cover it up, then you're supposed to uncover it.
It was quite a trick. Well, it's still a unique operation today. I understand they're still cultivating a little. It kind of went to a lot of this chemical, but
Yeah.
today they're most of the fellows I talked to still cultivate it once.
Right.
Okay, and then as your life progressed in the cheese industry,
Well, this Hank Bulliger had made cheese early here in Greene County when he was a bachelor. He made Swiss cheese. And later on, he got up around Rice Lake, and up there was a lot of American made, and he learned how to make cheddar cheese the way it's supposed to be made. We'd make brick, whichever would pay out the best. That's what he would make. We had quite a lot of milk. There was a lot of work. We had power, a gas engine, but you had to stir the vats by hand with a wood rake.
and this was where? At,
A Folky.
A Folky. Now, your culture, your starter, did you always have good luck with that?
We did. Hank Bulliger was a top American and brick cheese maker. I always say that's where I learned to make brick cheese and how to make cheddar. The next year I worked over at Rock City Cheese Factory, and we made cheddar there. It wasn't quality cheddar either. That fellow didn't use lactic acid starter to make cheddar, and that's no way to make cheddar without lactic acid starter. You know that.
Yeah, I never heard of it made. Oh, I would say.
And what he would do, he'd save the dripping out of the cheese press, which was salt water, you might say. He put that in the milk. He told me he found out something, which he thought was important, and I thought it was terrible.
I never heard of that before.
Now I can believe that.
Although I have made cheese with Italian starter for barrel cheddar, where they wanted a real strong flavor for processing.
I made barrel cheddar during my day, just when the cheesemaker figured we were getting the best quality of milk in the spring of the year. And I also made Mammoth 300 pounders.
Oh, is that right?
Sold them to Lakeshire Marty up here. And the Davis Cheese Factory, Fritz Scribe and his sister made down there, they made 500-pound Mammoth. And Ed Bringenzer, you know him?
Sure, Ed.
He was buying cheese for Lakeshire Marty. He told me, you'll have to get a hired man, you can't do this yourself. But I did. Pardon me.
Now, I know for sure, which I want to say this, they only bought the best cheese. You didn't make 500 pounds of something that they couldn't use. They had to go to the best factory, so you had to have a good name and a good reputation.
Right.
And I commend you on that, because I know this for sure. They put the best factories, because that was used as kind of a show cheese in the stores.
Yeah.
It had to have good flavored and, So, Mammoth cheddar, well then you had to make the hook yourself, the tub to fit it in, or?
No, that was one break for me. They furnished the equipment, like the tubs, which were made out of galvanized.
Oh.
And the press, like if I made 2 Mammoth barrel cheese, they had an individual press, and press would be screw jack,
Yeah.
and they were on runners. And I had a ram to take place of the 3 steps to roll this cheese down into the cellar. Well, we made cheese down at the Otter Creek down by Davis for 12 years. And I was at a meeting for cheesemakers down at Freeport, where the inspector says we're going to come out to the cheese factory and start making sediment tests, see how much dirt the farmers are bringing in their milk. So Walter thought, I'll be ahead of anybody else. I was probably one of the first cheesemakers in northern Illinois that started making sediment tests, and that nearly cost me my job. Some of the farmers didn't like to see how much dirt they were bringing. I thought I'd clean up my farmers before the inspector came.
Maybe you can explain here to us here, the sediment test, that was a tubular instrument.
Yes, it was a round cup, about so big and about this long, a plunger in it. And I'd catch some of the last milk that the farmers were pouring out of a can and then pull it out like that. The vacuum is what...
Pull the milk through.
Yeah.
And then the dirt would show up on this pad.
On this pad. So I later got a new sediment tester that just put in the can to the bottom of the can and then...
What year do you think that was about? What year?
Oh, what I say, around 35, 6.
35. And before that, there really wasn't any standard you could bring
No,
in.
and some of the farmers didn't like to see how much dirt they had in their milk, and with some of them you had no problem. And it's no job to furnish clean milk. I found that out when we went farming. I never had a dirty sample.
So before that was bring your all raw milk. And no cooling facilities.
No.
And at that time, then the farmers were cooling the milk, right? That's when you had the 10-gallon
Probably in the outdoor cow tank.
Yeah.
Poor place to cool milk.
When the windmill didn't wind
Yeah,
that day, it was a hot day. The farmer came in and said, I made hay all day, I'm not pumping it by hand.
Now, one year, I don't remember what year that was, when they had cheese holiday up here in Greene County, and a lot of the Swiss cheese factories started separating milk. And they were
That'd be around 41,
I think it was 2.
42.
The Davis Cheese Factory got a whole load of cheese back, unfit for consumption. And Walter got a load back, and they asked us to come up and get the cheese. So one of the farmers hauled our cheese, we went up to get it, and 2 Swiss that worked out there at Lake Shire Marty brought the cheese out. And I knew both of them, and they knew me. Says, Walter, why don't you separate milk like the Swiss cheese factories are separating up here in Greene County? So we had a meeting amongst the farmers, and we decided to separate. I wasn't too anxious about separating milk, and I thought to myself, these fellows hired me to make cheese, not to separate milk. So we had another meeting, and I talked to the farmers, let's go back to making cheese. And I called up Dornsweiger's father. He was buying cheese for Armours. If we go to making brick cheese, will you buy it? Sure. We quit making cheese and made cheddar. Either cheddar or brick. And my experience in making cheddar sold to Kraft. One day, did you know Al Steinman from Winslow?
No, man. No.
He was our Kraft's troubleshooter. He come in the factory all excited one day, Walter, you're running low on butterfat. And I never heard of a cheese factory having low butterfat cheese, not separating any milk, and have low butterfat cheese. And
It was probably about the month of June, right?
I don't remember what month.
June and July. Somewhere in there.
But he suggested to me that I pasteurize my cream, which maybe was around 3 gallons. He told me to pasteurize the cream, cool it down, and put it back in your milk. So I started doing that, and one day I forgot to put cream in vat A. I put it all in vat B, and when I got the returns, the vat that I didn't put any cream in was legal. The vat that I put the cream in was low butterfat. And I'm telling you folks, that's when Walter quit selling cheese to Crafts or making cheddar. I went back to brick cheese and sold to farmers.
That's an interesting time, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the year of 1942, I didn't recall whether it was 41 or 42, but the war was already on, and most of the cheesemakers just couldn't understand why they had a cheesemaker holiday when when the war in Europe was going, and just to share this with you, we were on a cheese factory there in the Opie there, which is north of Warren and Gratiot, and they wanted my dad to make casein. Some of the factories made casein.
Yeah.
And my pa said, no, I'm not making no casein. But several factories around there separated the milk and made casein out of the rest. Well, let's take a little break here, and then we'll take a little break and come back and ask you some more questions and discuss some more of your life.
Thank you so much. Would you like a glass of water?
No, thank you.
Okay, now, cheese transported. Walter, had a little break here, a little chance to kind of get a little air. What was the first cheese factory that you were on?
The state line, south of Windy Acres, right on the Illinois line.
And that was, how old were you then?
20.
20. Well, would you kind of just tell us how long were you there then?
2 years.
2 years. And what year was that?
30.
1930. Well, give us a little history on the different factories you were on then.
Well, I'd like to finish with the state line. It turned out good cheese. Swiss Colony had started business here in Monroe at that time, just shortly before that. And they wanted our brick cheese, and they paid us a 1/4% premium a pound. And I didn't have a poor batch in the 2 years that I was there. Now, the second year, I needed more milk, and I got after the farmers, let's pay out by butterfat. Well, I had one farmer that had brown Swiss cattle, and you couldn't blame him for not wanting to sell milk and straight without paying according to butterfat. So I talked to these fellows that weren't bringing milk the first year, and I got these farmers to haul milk. I had twice as much milk after I got these other fellows to haul milk. And still sold, all the while I was there, we sold to Swiss Colony. Well, the next factory was the Otter Creek, north of Davis. They wanted a new cheesemaker, and the president of that factory and the cheesemaker and the president of the farmers came up to this cheese factory and wanted to see the factory, the cheese, which was on shelves. That was when we had to wash brick cheese, so it had a nice yellow rind. You couldn't sell cheese white like they've been selling it for years. They had to wash them 3 times a week.
Get a little smear on there.
Yeah.
Of course, that gave it the flavor too, right?
Yeah.
I bet that was good cheese.
You bet.
And, how did the farmers haul their milk at that time?
With horse and wagon.
Horse and wagon, yeah.
And the way they had to dip, each farmer brought 50-gallon barrels, put his weigh in, and I had to divide the weigh up so that as close as I could so they got their share.
Yeah, them horses, there were a lot of Broncos and there were some tame ones. And did you ever have any experiences with the horses there where they were?
No.
I thought you kind of caused a runaway, you was telling me here.
Well, when I scared the horse dragging a bushel basket down the hill with grass in for my rabbits. That's what scared the horse.
What happened?
That hired man went out the back end of the rig. The horse started out with a jerk, I guess. And I never got too scolded on account of it.
Yeah, they brought a lot of Broncos from out west and broke them here. And I've heard several stories.
I always loved horses very dearly. On Saturday, when I was home at the Whitehead factory, Dad would come to town on Saturday, and if they had a carload of horses in, I'd go along and I'd want to see these horses at the Nuenswander stable. And one time they had a whole carload of Broncos out at the stockyard. And while I was there, they broke a nice black mare to lead while I was there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, there was some hard cowboys. They talk about the cowboys in the West, but there were a lot of cowboys here too.
Yeah.
And then I understand you got married to a lady called Elizabeth, and maybe you could tell us a few things about that.
In 32, when we were at the Klein factory, when we got married. And our first child was born down at the Otter Creek. That was in 35, wasn't it, Elizabeth? And in 2 years, she had a boy. And then Sally came in about a year and a half after that, down at the Otter Creek.
And the children went to country school and
Country school.
And today they send buses out. And you used to have to bundle them up in the wintertime.
Oh, we experienced that off the farm. They had buses, picked up the children and went to judo school.
And then after the Whitehead, that was your last factory, or the state, what was your last factory then?
The Otter Creek down by Davis.
Down by Davis.
Yeah, that's closed up a number of years ago. That's where Somerset, have you heard of that?
I've heard of Lake Somerset, yes.
East of the factory, they bought quite a lot of land there and farmers closed them up. That happened after I had left the factory. It didn't operate too long after we left. Today there's no factory there, it's farm ground.
It's farm ground, but that's right there, that Lake Somerset down there. Yeah.
West End.
Well, you've enjoyed your cheese making. Did you ever think in your life maybe that you would like to did something or have done something else?
When I quit making cheese, I wanted to forget everything I ever knew about cheese. What do you suppose I did? Work for Armours in the cheese cold storage.
Is that right? For old Bill Wanger here. Bill Wanger, was he really?
No, Swigert.
Swigert, Dorn Swigert.
Blackie Swigert.
Oh.
And later on, Dorn took over the management of Armours. They were a good outfit to sell cheese to. The best I ever sold to. But my experience in making cheddar, sold to Lakeshire Marty, I supposedly had cheese unfit for human consumption, and I didn't make any cheese like that. I supposedly had flies in the cheese, and I wish I'd had a state man come down and check every bit of this cheese. Well, we brought a load of cheese back. The Davis factory lost the whole load. They plugged the cheese and poured something in the plug hole so it couldn't be edible. I don't know.
Fish oil sometimes.
I don't know what they ever done with their cheese, but we brought our cheese home, put it in the cellar, and after it had been in the cold storage a couple of days, it got cooled off real good. I put it in my cellar, no cooling. It's wet, and I had to scrape all those cheddar cheese and re-paraffin them. And one day I went to the salesman farmer at the factory, and I says, Edwin, you come along with me. We're going to get rid of this cheese. How? I says, we're going to stop at every place we can where I know they sell cheese and try and sell it. And we reduced the price, and I had a cheddar cheese in the car, which I cut. And when I stopped at one store in Broadhead, like a grocery store, I talked to this manager and asked him about buying some of my cheese. I got a good price. Oh, I buy my cheese from somebody up by Mineral Point or Mount Horeb. I'm going to continue buying my cheese up there. And finally he says, I'll take a cheese. So he took a cheddar. Within a few days I got word from him, a letter, he wanted another cheese. I didn't have any more. So we realized something out of this cheese anyway.
That's what you call being resourceful. And then how many children did your family end up with then?
We had 3 children.
And then you retired in Monroe then, more or less, and worked for Armour.
Yes. And I worked for Goldenrod in Broadhead after I quit Armours. We went to Switzerland. Mother always said, if I ever can inherit money from home, we're going to Switzerland. And I wasn't anxious about going to Switzerland at all until we got over there and I saw what a nice little country this is where my parents came from and met some of my nice relatives. Am I glad? I went to Switzerland and we were over there 3 times since then.
Is that right? sure the relatives are glad to see you.
Yeah, and we've had relatives came to see us, which wouldn't have come if we hadn't gone out there to see them.
Now, your father, did he ever get back to Switzerland?
Never.
Never.
My mother went along with us the first time we went out after 50 years. And when we got to Cloton, the airport, some of our relatives were there, and my mother asked this old lady, "Who are you?" "I'm your sister, Marie." I could have cried. She hadn't been there for 50 years.
50 years. My goodness, it was quite a thing, these immigrants that came over here.
Oh,
back
goodness, I don't see how they could leave and say goodbye and think we'll never see you again.
Yeah, it just, well, I understand it was kind of a way of life, the Irish famine, and of course, I know like in Glarus there wasn't any jobs, and they said that it was the country of the gold.
We were too Glarus.
Well, thank you very much, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
And glad that Elizabeth came along here with you. And
She helped.
I got to find out what cheese factory that she was born on out of Stockton.
What was it, Mother?
I think it was a Perry cheese factory.
The Perry?
Perry cheese factory. It's no longer there.
Yeah. Perry Cheese Factory.
Perry, P-E-R-R-Y.
Yeah, there's some Perrys down there.
Yes, there are.
And I'm sure it was probably on a Perry farm. I'll have to check that out.
I have a picture of the Perry farm. I'm not sure if I was born in that farm or whether I was born in the cheese factory, but I know two of my siblings were born there.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth and Walt, and we'll see you again.
I hope
Like
so.
they say, guten Abend.
I'm glad I
Good
met
morning.
you.
Gotta ask you one
More question here.
Because he's
I understand that you play music,
I played accordion.
played in the new one.
We were the last ones to play in the old Inner Hall the night it burned, and we were the first ones to play in this new home.
Did you ever know my father?
Sure, doing well, danced to his music.
Is that right?
Different times, probably in the old Turner Hall.
That's the truth.
Oh, I got it. I know that, I suppose on Sundays you did your practicing too at the cheese factory.
And she said,
Oh, I used to play a lot, and you know, last summer I quit playing accordion.
Is that right?
I shouldn't
They would
have.
blame me. She says,
And I played all by ear.
Would be crying.
Well, that's what you had to have. I mean, you didn't have notes unless you had your own. I know my pa, he wrote all his own down, you know, and,
I went to Chicago to take music lessons. Our hired man at the time, Ernie Hoffman, that worked for Dad, gone to Chicago, and he worked researcher in the cheese cold storage, and he encouraged me to come down because I bought accordion through Rindlischbacher from Rice Lake, and Ernie had bought his from him. So I went, a friend took me to Chicago. I had no relatives in Chicago. This friend took me to a boarding house where Ernie boarded. And he come along with me the first day to the cold storage, operated by a researcher from Broadhead.
He thinks she'll make it okay. I think he may.
Swiss cheese, I and another man, the only help he had.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I don't know what they'll do.
And
First they had the,
this boarding house, I don't know how many other
we went into the Redford.
men boarded there, but one morning at the breakfast table, I had pimples on my hand. I wonder what I am getting.
Hotel or something.
And I happened to think of bed bugs. I jerked down the sheet that night, and the bed bugs were crawling around on the sheet, and I got homesick. I cried one day in the storage all by myself.
If he could see what happened to Jim.
Like I say, I had nobody in Chicago.
Sorry.
I worked for 1 week, and I come back to Monroe.
Back home. Yeah, the big city.
I didn't have any lessons on the accordion. The music teacher was on vacation. So I wasn't staying in Chicago.
Well, thank you very much for an interesting conversation,
You're welcome.
and we'll see you again. Something. I always known you as Bosch.
Yeah.
then from there, he moved over east of Twin Grove to the Whitehead factory.
I see. Now, what part of Switzerland did your father come from?
Wasson. By
Wasson,
Bern.
Wasson,
Bern
also.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a few Lassers around there then.
Yeah.
And are you related to the other Lassers around here?
Well, cousins.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Because, Walter, his father came from Wasson also. Did you say Wasson?
Wasson.
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 All right. And then what do you remember back in your dad's factory then?
Well, the first I can tell, when he moved from there to the Whitehead factory to the Cauldron factory abroad. And that's where I started school. Because I remember going to school, it was a mile to school, and I couldn't talk a word of English. And my dad said to me many times, he said, "You beat me home from school," because I couldn't talk English. But I finally learned it anyhow.
You know, it seemed to me that many of the immigrants here wanted to teach their children the Swiss.
That's right.
The Swiss dialect, and it's kind of interesting today that you can still speak it, right?
Yes, and I went back to Switzerland, and when I went over there, they said they were surprised that I was born in America, the way I talked to them.
Because they had the old Swiss
Yeah.
dialect.
That's right.
And it's been real interesting. I know many families where the family was married to another ethnic group, maybe Irish or English,
Yeah.
and the young children are kind of sorry they didn't have that
That's right.
chance.
That's right.
But it was quite a hurdle to go to school the first
Yes,
year.
it was. You bet it was.
Okay, then your other experience with your factory, then you lived in the factory there with your father, and,
Yeah.
and what type of heat did you have down at the factory?
Well,
How
then-
did you heat the milk?
That I suppose with the fire wagon. Fire wagon.
Yeah.
And then he moved from there to the spike factory. And we had fire wagon there, I think, for 2 years. And then my dad finally put in a boiler there, and then we heated with steam.
Heat with steam.
And we had a Delco electric motor for the electricity and the power to run the shafts and all that with that.
You had a big electrical motor.
Electrical motor.
Now, what year was that, you think, around?
1930.
That's when the electricity started coming in around.
Yeah,
you know.
that's right.
I know the area where I live is around 34, 35, or 36. But the aluminium factories hit as high as 40,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, and at Martintown, back in the 40s, they still had, they didn't even have a fire. They had the hurt, built the fire underneath.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
down there, and they were the Weisbros factory. And then the farmers brought their milk first with
Horse and wagon.
wagon.
I'll never recall. I was just a young guy, and the farmers brought the milk with a horse and wagon, you know. And
That kind of makes a noise.
the horse and wagon, and one morning Miss Matt Baumgartner passed old Fred Riffenhock in front of the factory with the wagon. And he got up so he could dump his milk before Riffenhock could. Then a fight started. And the first thing, I was standing there pumping away for the farmers, and first thing I knew, old Fred Riffenhock threw Matt Baumgartner away then.
Is that right? Just because somebody wanted to be first.
And then the lawyer come out to see me, there was going to be a lawsuit, and I remember as a kid how scared I was about going to court. But it finally got settled anyhow.
Well, and that was with horses yet.
Oh yeah.
One of the horses didn't run away.
They did.
They did. They must have been pretty well tamed. All right, and then you had electricity already in the 30s.
Yeah.
Okay, then your sewage, where did that go? How did
That just run down the road.
Well, down the road, down the ditch, that's
Yeah.
the way it was in those
Yeah,
days. And,
that's right.
And, did you have many flies around the factory?
Oh yeah.
That also went with it in those days.
Yes. Yeah.
Well then, as time passed on and you grew up to be a boy, a young man, then did you ever make cheese yourself, or?
No, then I was with my dad until 1934, and I got married. And I stayed with him till 1935, and then in 35, Arnold Rohrer came out there, and he wanted me to take a factory up at Blanchardville. And I went up and looked at it, and I think there was about 15 steps into the basement. And I said, I wouldn't come up here to make cheese where you had that many steps to go down the basement. So then I just got away from cheese making, and 36, I started up a cream mill.
On the basement, most of those cheese factories are built into a hill,
Yeah.
kind of the cooling effect.
Yeah.
But from the making room to go back in the cellar, 16 steps with
Yeah.
Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
That was a backbreaker and
Yeah.
also dangerous.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I suppose they built it in the hill in those
Yeah.
days that they had to.
Yeah.
And that's why they went down that low.
Yeah.
Okay, then where did you go?
Well, then I started picking up cream.
You started for,
Goldenrod
for
in
Goldenrod.
1936
and they were located
in
in
Broadhead.
Broadhead.
Yeah. And then I started, well, you had quite a few creameries here. Then we had Monroe Dairy, and you also had Lakeshire Marty. That competition was pretty tough. So, but I built up, and I got a pretty good cream route going from all in around Greene County and Lafayette County and then north. Oh, I got up as far as Dane County. But then,
How many miles would you put on that cream route the other day?
quite a few
And that was in the old 10-gallon cans.
in the old 10-gallon cans.
It built you up muscular.
Yeah, that's right. Then,
What kind of roads did they have in the late 30s there?
oh, you had some pretty rough roads then. You had a lot of dirt roads and poorly graveled roads, a lot.
So you get stuck.
In the winter, yeah.
Well,
Then in the winter come that, I think it was, 1936 got to be a bad winter then. And I couldn't go out on the cream route for, for 2-3 weeks at a time, the factories that hold the cream. And for 2 weeks I helped Greene County then go out and plow and snow, because they had to get these roads open.
sure.
So I helped them then for a couple of weeks, and then picked up cream and went along, and then, let me see, in 40, then the war come along, and I was picking up cream, and all these cheesemakers didn't have hired help, so finally they called Louis Crowder from Monticello, called me, said, "Will you come up and wash cheese for me?" So I went and washed cheese for him. And then the first thing, Alfred Buellman called me from Judah and said, "Will you come and wash cheese for me?" And then Albin Seeholzer out the Spring Valley factory asked me to come and wash his cheese, and Ernie Kensick down the Spies factory. So I started washing cheese for 4 factories, and get up early in the morning, go and wash that cheese, and then come home and go on your cream route.
Cream route. Wow,
Yeah.
It must have been awful muscular, because that was, washing cheese was where you take this 180, 200-pound
That's
Lever
right.
Swiss and put it on the table and
Yeah.
turn it over and wash it with salt water, right?
That's right.
Did you ever get what they call a knuckle green or a felon?
No, that I never did get.
Didn't get that. huh?
But the worst factory to wash cheese was for Alfred Buellman down to Maple Grove factory. He had all these 3,200-pound kettles, and he had everything from 200 to 2 1/4.
And sometimes they went over the lids and you couldn't get a hold
That's
of
right,
it, right?
that's right.
That was the hardest
Yeah,
part,
that was right.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty strenuous
Yeah.
days. Well, that was an occupation that
Yeah.
that came later in cheesemaking. Usually the cheesemaker and hired man did his own washing.
That's right.
And you went, did you have to wash the lids too, or you
No.
You didn't have to
I
wash
just
them?
go up there and wash the cheese, and I'd leave.
You didn't leave, and you
Yeah.
probably have to wash them twice a week?
Oh, yeah.
Twice
Every
a week or
place
3
twice
times?
a week.
Twice a week.
At
you
least
wash
twice
them.
a week,
And
yeah.
then move them up
Yeah.
to the higher shelf to.
And move them back to the cool cellar,
From
from
the
the cool
cellar.
cellar to the hot cellar.
And you got paid by the hour or by the cheese?
So much of cheese.
So much cheese. Do you recall what that?
I think it was 10 cents
10
a piece or something like that.
Yeah, the only price I think of. I watched cheese one time
Yeah.
for a while there,
Yeah.
and I got 10 cents.
Yeah.
Well, that was something interesting
Yeah.
too that the war caused, and then
Yeah.
of course that kind of went. And
Yeah.
of course, now they don't make so much Swiss cheese
No,
anymore.
no.
Then you have any children?
We had a boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl.
We lost one boy.
Oh, boy. But, no more cheesemakers or cream hog.
No.
That cream hog is Polk now.
That's right.
And Ray Day.
Yeah.
Well, did you have any ever problems with the cream, you know, like being too ripe,
Oh,
or the lids off? Or?
Very seldom, very seldom. Then in, I think it was 43, Leo Chevrolet down the Goldenrod Creamery bought out the McCullough Creamery. And he said to me, he says, I want you to take over the Illinois route for me. So that meant buying a bigger truck and a covered body and getting Illinois permits. So I started out in Illinois. So that kept me busy, and then I had 2 trucks. I had a 3/4 ton open truck, and I'd go out in the morning early and pick up. I had farmers down there to pick up. So I go down and pick up
for broadhead there.
for broadhead, I'd
Yeah.
pick it up, and I'd have my go and get that all picked up, and then I'd bring it home to Monroe. My wife would take it into broadhead for me in the afternoon, and then I'd go out in the afternoon and take the big truck and hit the factory. Ended up down to Warren too.
Sure, I remember, yeah, that's where I got to know you, on the cream route. Yeah, and Turner Hall, and when did you come into Turner Hall?
In 1950.
1950?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. I sold the route to my brother and started at Turner Hall in July the 1st of 1950.
Well, that was quite a change, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And then how long were you here?
Altogether, I put in 27 years here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
27 years. Well, that's quite a...
See, I had been here until 1973, and I quit and just took over the bowling alley.
Mhm.
But then my wife and I went to Switzerland, and they had trouble with the manager here then, and I came back from Switzerland, and they begged me to come back into the hall again for 4 years.
Now, the Turner Hall Club is composed of just the Swiss singers, or a lot of different
Well,
members?
see, at that time you had the Turners and the Cheesemakers Association and the Swiss Singers. All those organizations.
organizations.
Yeah, and then GOG Lodge was in here pretty good.
Yeah, I always remember you at Turner Hall.
Yeah.
Always have a smile on, and a lot of work.
Yeah,
The
a lot of
place
work.
was always clean.
Yeah.
You know, you had a reputation for
Yeah.
cleanliness,
Yeah.
and anything else that you can think of that cream route? Did you lose any can lids on the?
All back, that was during the war too. I was pretty worried for a while. See, these Badger Cheese Company here then came around and went out all these factories that I had up around here and took their Monroe Dairy cream cans out there and said they was buying the Badger Cheese Company was buying the milk from the factory, not the cheese. They bought the milk, and that's what they was paying them for the milk. Well, then the cream, they said, had to go to Monroe Dairy. But I had some good old Swiss cheesemakers, and they stuck by me, and I didn't lose a factory through
Is that right?
Not a one.
Not a one.
Not a one.
Well, thank you.
And then when I quit in 1950 at Goldenrod Creamery, Leo Chevrolet gave me a gold watch, and he says, you know, you started that cream route out from nothing, and he says, you got as big as you ever was going to get.
Is that right?
And then I seen him about 3 months later, and he says, when you quit, I could have told you I was going to be done in the creamery too.
In 1950, right?
Yeah.
1950.
Yeah.
Then what counties did you cover? Lafayette, Greene, and
Lafayette, Greene,
Joe Davis,
yeah,
and Stevenson.
in Stevenson, yeah.
That was quite a route.
Yeah.
How many factories do you think you picked up right about that
Oh,
time?
God.
You know, I mean, there were patrons, 20 or?
Oh, God, I must have had 20 years, and then I bet you by the time I doubled it after I went to Illinois. And then more than that, because I had a lot of farmers that was separating in Illinois at that time.
Oh, you picked cream up in the
Yeah,
farm too?
from the farms,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Illinois, that was kind of where they had the beef cattle, and
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
they didn't
Yeah.
have calves on, they
Yeah.
turned around and separated,
Yeah.
separated, and the calves to skim
Yeah.
milk. They
Yeah.
weren't the big dairy farmers.
No.
Very interesting. Well, we're recording this here for Monroe Historic Cheese Center, and I appreciate you coming in this afternoon on kind of short notice.
Yeah.
Well, Sebastian, I had to look up, I couldn't find that Bosch.
Oh, no.
What does Bosch mean? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know, that Bash, they call me right
Bash,
from the Swiss at Bashi.
Let's see, yeah. All right, and thank you again, and like they say in Switzerland, bitte Roger?
Yeah. But there's that.
Nobody to say it.
Yeah.